Hi, everybody. I'd like to thank CFRI for hosting this podcast for World NTM Awareness Day. I'd like to thank the sponsors for supporting this podcast and the sponsors who are supporting World NTM Awareness. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you'll find this informative. I hope you'll find it helpful as we learn a little bit more about NTM. So let's start off with what is NTM? NTM stands for non-tuberculous mycobacteria. They are environmental pathogens. They're found in soil, they're found in water. They're hardy little bugs, so they survive potable water system treatments. So they are in tap water. Most people are not susceptible to them, but a certain segment of the population are, especially those with lung diseases like cystic fibrosis. CF patients tend to be particularly vulnerable to them. So I'm going to introduce you to our organization, give you a little bit of background on how we started and how this all relates to cystic fibrosis. And then we'll get a little bit more into the weeds about NTM and what it's all about, how it's treated, and what treatments are coming online, and how it all relates to one another. So let's go ahead and get started and introduce you. So World NTM Awareness Day was started a few years ago by our organization, by NTM Info Research. And it takes place every year on August 4th. So we chose that date because that is actually the anniversary of our founding. And the person who founded it, so there they are, Philip and Fern Leitman, my father and my late stepmother. So my late stepmom, Fern, she was a patient actually. She actually was a patient from the time she was a kid. So she had her first hemoptysis when she was 14. She was diagnosed with bronchiectasis and Pseudomonas. She had a bout of NTM infection in her early 20s with a species called M. avium complex that was treated, it was cured. And then in her mid 40s, she was infected with another species called M. abscessus. And I say different species because there are over 200 species of NTM, but only a handful are known to infect people. MAC and abscesses are the two most common there's a couple of others. There's fortuitum, there's Kansasii, but MAC and abscesses are the two most common ones. CF patients are seen to be particularly vulnerable to abscesses. So there they are, Fern and Philip. They're in Italy enjoying themselves. It was a great time. But they went out to National Jewish when Fern got abscesses. They were not having any success getting treated. And that's when they met a bunch of patients out there who were kind of in the same boat. There wasn't a lot of information and they didn't know how to get any. And so my dad said to Fern, well, why don't you list a bunch of questions that you think you'd want answered as a patient? So she did that. They got them answered, and that became a pamphlet called Insight. And here you see the very glossy, professional looking version. The first version was actually reproduced on a Xerox machine. But eventually there was more demand for the information. And then that information was turned into a bigger website. So that's ntminfo.org. So now it's kind of the hub for all things NTM. And that's the evolution of the organization. From there, it was, people were saying, well, we need some research and we need, more patient advocacy, more patient support. And that's how NTM Info Research was born. It was kind of an accidental not-for-profit. When it first started, there were 3 independent support groups. We now have a lot more. So I wanted to put this up on the screen for you. There is a QR code. If you want to order the Insight pamphlet, you can also download it, by the way. It's available in 11 languages online. You can download it. But we do give away copies for free. We give them out like Halloween candy. So you can order as many copies as you need and you can order them for free. If you're a doctor and you want them for your office, you can order them to give them to your patients. If you are a patient, you want copies for yourself and some family and friends, you can order those as well. So there you are. Log on to ntminfo.org or scan that QR code. So I mentioned the support groups. So we started with 3, we're up to 47 now. 5 of them are outside of the United States. We have an at-large international group. We've got a Canada, a New Zealand, an Australia, etc. We've also got some sort of specialized focus groups. We have a men's group, we have an under 50 group, we have a group en Espanol, and we have something called extrapulmonary and disseminated NTM. So what that means is that it's occurring outside of the lungs. So NTM can infect any part of the body. It's usually the lungs, about 70 to 80% of the cases. However, in some cases, especially when somebody is severely immune suppressed, they can get the infection in other parts of the body. It can be skin, it can be soft tissue, it can be lymph nodes. Lymph nodes tends to present when somebody is immune suppressed. We see a lot more of the skin and soft tissue from surgeries. We're seeing a lot more from the cosmetic surgeries that have been going on, the Brazilian butt lifts, the liposuctions. There have been clusters of cases around the United States stemming from them. They've had breakouts from LASIK places, they've had breakouts from pedicure salons. So it really is an inoculation point. Another way that it can be is somebody can become infected with an extrapulmonary infection, and we call these fish tank granulomas. And generally, the species is M. marinum, and it's pretty much the only species that naturally occurs in salt water. But oftentimes, it's people who are cleaning their fish tanks, and they cut their hand or they have a cut on their hand, and they end up getting an infection. So that can happen as well. And so the treatment protocols are basically the same. When you treat NTM, like I said, these are really tough bugs to treat. It's generally 3 antibiotics. Sometimes they add a fourth or a fifth. It's for 12 to 18 months. They're tough to treat. Um, the antibiotics can have some harsh side effects. The good news is that one of the antibiotics, which is an aminoglycoside and has some harsh side effects, particularly on hearing, that is now an FDA approved treatment for pulmonary disease as an inhaled drug. So that inhaled medication has fewer side effects on the hearing. There are some side effects on the throats. People get laryngitis and they cough more. Those tend to go away with some management. They tend to go away also when you stop the medication, but the more severe side effects tend to be mitigated. There are also other drugs in the pipeline and in clinical trials now for other species, including abscesses. And I think that's very important, especially for the CF patients who, like I said, are more vulnerable to it. So I would encourage everybody to keep hope. There are treatments. When you have pulmonary NTM, one of the most important things you can do every single day is airway clearance. It is as important as any medication you're going to take, because the more you get out of your lungs, the less work the drugs have to do. So that's really, really important. For CF patients, 90% of you are going to have a genetic modulator therapy, which is great. Hopefully, the other 10% of you will have something like that available soon. What we are finding, and this is something that happened to Fern, when Fern was 60, she was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. They found 2 mutations, and that was done by genetic screening. And what we are finding is that is happening more and more with people later in life as adults. They are getting screened, they are found to have a mutation or 2 mutations, they are put on modulator therapy, and they are doing very well. And that's also helpful because as you sort of correct what's going on in the lungs, and as it helps clear some of the inflammation, some of the mucus, it's easier to deal with infection, it's easier to clear it. That's really important. So we're very hopeful that those 2 parts will sort of come together and help this patient population of CF patients. And that targeting, the sort of the underlying root cause of it is something that's being translated over into the non-CF population. We have these drugs that are called DPP1 inhibitors. They're targeting this neutrophilic inflammation that goes on in bronchiectasis patients. And those drugs are being developed now as well. I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of antibiotics in the pipeline. 10 years ago, we had a patient-focused drug development meeting at the FDA. And I think there was only one drug in the pipeline, the one that's been approved. There was only one clinical trial. So in 10 years' time, we've gone to more than a dozen treatments. So there's been a lot of progress in a short period of time. They're looking at phage therapy now. There's all kinds of things available. If you are looking to join a support group, if you have NTM, you can certainly log on to ntminfo.org and get more information. There's an email address that you can email for more information. If you have questions about NTM, you can email us, you can call us. We're always available. You just have to log on to ntminfo.org. So that is part of what we offer as an organization for NTM. Even if you don't have NTM, but you have CF or you have another mucociliary disease and you have questions about, how to mitigate your risk, you can call us. We're happy to talk to you. So I mentioned World NTM Awareness Day. So that was launched a few years ago. And we sort of just take over the whole month of August. We don't just limit it to one day, because why should we? It should be a whole party for the whole month. So you can find out more by logging on to worldntmday.org. So this year we have 2 webinars planned so far. We are probably going to have at least one more, if not 2. The first webinar on August 4th on World NTM Awareness Day is about mindful breathing and its potential benefits for symptom management. And this is going to be done with a researcher out of Medical University of South Carolina. He's actually been doing research in this area, and we do think that it's something that's worth pursuing because a lot of patients have found that different kinds of breathing and different kinds of exercise are very helpful with airway clearance. And as I said earlier, airway clearance is really, really important for both CF and non-CF patients. On August 11th, we're going to have a webinar about phage therapy. So this is two researchers who are developing new ways to discover phages and to catalog them. One of them is actually also a CF patient himself and was successfully treated with phage therapy. So he's a great success story. He had abscesses and was treated. So that's something that you should log on to worldntmday.org and register for. I strongly encourage you, even if you haven't had NTM, if you have questions, if you just want to learn more, this is a great opportunity to learn about some of the things that are important for this, to learn about some of the advances in phage therapy, because this is really important. And, phage therapy is also being looked at for gram negatives like Pseudomonas. And that's, that's another big thing that our CF and non-CF populations are also vulnerable to. So again, I just wanted to reiterate World NTM Day, August 4th. We have a whole social media kit on our website, which is worldntmday.org. So please log on to our website, grab those social media posts and help us amplify the message. We really want to get the word out. We also have the media kit. We have pieces of the media kit in French and in Spanish. And we hope that you'll help us amplify this message. And again, if you have any questions, if you're a patient and you have any concerns, you can always reach out to us. You can log on to worldntmday.org. Our contact information is there, or to ntminfo.org. Thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And again, thank you so much to CFRI for hosting this podcast. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again sometime.